You are all. So this is Geddington, a small village in Northamptonshire, and what I'm going to cover now as I go into the village is a unheard of love story. So Queen Elanor Road. Obviously, as I head down, take me down to Elanor Cross. You got to remember, this is all off the cuff. I don't own a smartphone, so I can't tell you every last bit of information. But off the top of my head, I know I've come across one in Dunstable. There's a series of Eleanor's crosses where, after she died, Edward Longshanks, the one from King from Braveheart, set up a series of crosses marking the route her body took as she went home to London for a funeral, ending at Charing Cross, which is Trafalgar Square. So as I go into the village, there'll be an Elanor Cross there. There's definitely one at Dunstable. Where else is there one? There's one at Waltham Cross, near Waltham Abbey, between Essex and Hertfordshire. So, but I'm not entirely sure where it begins.
Okay, so
just for the record, I'm joined with a historian.
Edward is now this great villain.
Yeah.
And yet we've...
Do you mind if I film you?
Yeah. Edward is now this big villain, and unfortunately, and said I've got a lot of Scottish blood in me, but fact is that Edward was a friend of the Scots. Bruce has called him their honest broker. He went on a couple's trips with Alexander III and so on. But when Elanor died, he blamed the Scots for it. They were on the way to Scotland when she died. And this is one of only 2 kings in medieval history that was faithful to his wife throughout their marriage. One of only 5 since the conquest in England. And people say, oh yeah, well, how do you know they were faithful? Well, the fact is, we know that they had mistresses. We know they're illegitimate children. Edward's father, Henry III, loved his wife, but he had mistresses. The Duke of Buccleuch owns the 16,000 acres that surround us right now, right? He's the direct descendant of an illegitimate child of Henry II, Charles II. I mean, they got lands, they got, Anyways, Edward and Elanor went on the Crusades, where she had to get special dispensation from the Pope to go. They're the only royal couple to ever go on the Crusades together. They got trapped behind the lines for 10 months, where she had 2 children. She lost one. She lost another while being held hostage by his godfather, Simon de Montfort. And Edward had to escape, rescue her, beat his godfather Evesham, and then give the throne back to his father. He then built the House of Commons and House of Lords, wrote the rules for the first bicameral legislature on the planet, and the blueprint for every other parliament in the world. He willingly passed Magna Carta, the only king to do so. And then she died, and he becomes a cruel, vicious, very, very broken man. And this is about love. He felt that England treated her like a bloody Spaniard who came here with her family to take our jobs. And she was a wonderful woman. You didn't appreciate what she did for you. And I'm going to build billboards at every major crossroads in England to tell you how wonderful she was. Now, this was the big crossroads for the Midlands for over 1,000 years. You couldn't get to Northampton, to Stamford, to Oundle, to Oakham, to Rockingham without passing this cross. And it was many times bigger than Kettering and Corby. But the railway, which was supposed to come here, the Duke wouldn't allow the tracks across his land like Bath and Stamford, and instead it went to the little tiny farming villages, population 200, of Kettering and Corby, and everyone forgot. This used to be where the Royal Palace of Geddington was, and Edward and Elanor spent more time here consecutively than they did anywhere in England other than Windsor and London. And they would come here for 10 days at a time with 450 men, and the Royal Palace covered over 2 acres of land back there. So this thing isn't to ego, to war, to religion, to politics. It is to love. And it used to be red and gold, and they're all painted. It's one of the smallest. Charing Cross cost between 8 times as much as this, and so did Westcheap. And Cromwell spent 2 weeks sledgehammering it down. They had a sledgehammering party, and they rang bells and blew horns after it was finally taken down. And this one shouldn't be standing here. One of the big mysteries is, why is it still here? And one of the legends came up was that Cromwell took the cross off here. There was never a cross on this.
No.
It would snap that stuff anyways. You take a drone up there, you can see there's no sleeve. It's got a crown with a head with a crown around it. And trying to put a big 16-foot wooden cross in this wind tunnel of 3 streets, it isn't designed for it. But Edward also put books on all of them. There's books on Northampton. I did a consult for them when they refurbed it 5 years ago. and that was like the 5th major refurbishment on the Hardiston Northampton cross. Waltham's been moved so much that nobody really knows if any of the original stone is still on it. This is the only one still standing in the original site without any major refurbishment. It sits on the same spot it did 700 years ago, and all these houses have got medieval basements or vaulted ceilings. They've got medieval foundations. My house has got a medieval kiln holding up my roof beams, and then we think we nicked all the stone around 1600 from the royal palace and rebuilt the houses on top of the same foundations. The church is 1200 years old, and that's where Eleanor's body lay. So the cortege, with Edward in mourning, came down from Harby, where she died. They went up to Lincoln, where he had her eviscerated. So all her internal organs are now in Lincoln in a gold coffin. Heart was sent to Blackfriars. And because bodies weren't allowed inside churches in transit. So they eviscerated her, stuffed her, we think, and then they brought her into the churches. And she lay under the same windows that are in that church right now. And the cortege came down this road with these buildings here, went into that church, and it left over that bridge, which was built in 1250, 40 years before she died. And Edward, who'd come here all of his life, came back to Rockingham Castle, Kingslip, all his other properties, and never returned to Geddington after she died. And it's not to ego, to war, to religion, to politics, it's to love. And it isn't the Taj Mahal, but it is centuries and centuries older. And the fact that people don't appreciate that this is one of the great monuments to love. And it shouldn't be here. It should have been destroyed by Cromwell. If the railway had come here, this would be 60,000 people, and this would all be gone. It sits on a magic spring. It preserved it. This box, the villagers all say it's a lockup, because after we put locks on it in about 1970s, they told their kids if they were bad, that's where they'd end up. But this was the main traffic area, right? And this all was commercial right to the 60s. Every one of these buildings, you had the tea shop, you had the butchers, you had the greengrocers, and we didn't have piped water until the 50s. So the only source of water was this. And they have the floor of this is a foot below the water level. And it's still filled with water. And Charles Dickens refers to the bubbling spring under the cross. Can you see the water flowing out? It never stops.
Yep. So
we have droughts here all the time. The river can dry up. Everything can dry up. This never goes down an inch. They told me they took 100 buckets a day out of this right up until the 60s without it dropping down an inch. So, of course, pagans thought it was magic. And we found broken pennants and prayer scrolls from the Romans in here. And this is not only a Roman road, it leads to a barrow that was excavated dated 2500 BC. We found Stone Age, Iron Age in Geddington. Roman stuff is everywhere. My neighbor had a metal detector for half an hour before he found his first Roman bracelet. You are walking, that road connects with Ermine Street, that connects with Foss, that connects with Watling. This is the crossroads of all the Roman roads.
Watling Street,
And no, the Ermine and Foss are the ones that run parallel on the sides.
Okay.
This is the crossroads for all the major Roman roads for over 2,000 years. And once the railway didn't come here, everyone forgot it. Became a little village on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And that the cross was
Everyone
saved because nobody knew it was here or something. Well, we don't know why Cromwell didn't come down from Rockingham, where he was with the whole model army. He marched from there to Naseby. Why he didn't come down and destroy this is a big mystery. But he didn't take a bloody cross off the top. So I said it's all, the reason there used to be books on all of them. There are books on the ones in Northampton, there are books on Waltham, is because Elanor wrote 6 languages, and she's the first person in history, we think, to translate multiple books into English. When she arrived here, French was not only the national language, you couldn't speak English in Parliament for another 2 generations after she died. And she felt, what's the point of having English if you can't read in your own language? So she spent tons of her own money supplying abbeys and monasteries to translate the great books into English so they'd be accessible to the common man. She commissioned new authors and so on, and basically founded what became the libraries of Oxford and Cambridge. And Edward, this warrior king who rode into battle ahead of his men and whatever, and great villain, put books on all of them to tell people about his wife's intellectual accomplishments. All right?
Fantastic.
She's literally on a pedestal.
Yeah, you're right. Literally, yeah.
And it is one of the great love stories. Hey, Chris. Go okay? Magic. And we wanted to dig here, at least University of Leicester wanted to, but the problem is the spring is keeping this cross standing. The original wood in Northampton had to be replaced in 1906 because it was rotting. and they rebuilt it and moved it ever so slightly to widen the road. But our bog oak, our pilings that this is built on, are in the spring, and they've never been exposed to air. So if the spring stops, this could collapse within weeks. So if even a core sample going down here, because if this is a Roman site and the Romans took it over, there could be under here, like the fens, all the stuff perfectly preserved in the muck. You could have leather, you could have weapons, you could have things that were sacrificed going back thousands and thousands of years. And so they wanted to go in here, but said all it takes is one core sample that blocks the spring and the cross collapses. So until we can get a proper reading and where the flow is and where the spring is, this can't be touched, because obviously it's
yeah, you don't want to touch that now.
But we're trying to dig up the where the palace was, but that we're on what they call iron clay, and iron clay refracts geophys. So eventually we will have a dig up there, but it's going to be a blind dig, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
I always said it's
couldn't have bumped into a better person, really.
Well, if you're interested, the tours to the church right now, because there's a wedding there, tours are free. We'd like a donation on occasion.
Of course, yeah.
But
certainly deserve one.
You don't have to, and we do tours of the village as well. And they're 5-star rated in TripAdvisor.
So
the only thing in the area that's 5-star rated. That said, it's free. There's no cross on top. That's the imagination of a guy who wrote a book called Sparks in the Village Forge in 1840. And
so just to make sure he gets some advertising, because that was entirely by chance. You can't see the cards, so I have to read it so it's out of focus, and I've only got one hand on me. So camtours.com with a K, so KAM tours.com. Emails Toursby, so TOURSBY KAM at gmail.com. Mobile number 01536, sorry, phone number 01536 741 778. Just to make sure he gets some advertisement, because that wasn't planned. It was just us walking down and he came out of his house. So I think he deserves some advertisement for what he's just done. He did that off his own back as well, his own time. Yeah, just to try and give him, there's his publicity. So Cam Cadle, that's his name, camtours.com. Where's his mobile, his phone number. So a screenshot that if you're interested in a tour. Right, it's my turn to give you a little history lesson, just going off what I'm reading on here. So memorial for a queen. This richly decorated medieval cross was built in the 1290s to commemorate Elanor of Castile, the highly educated and powerful Queen of Edward I. Elanor died in Harby, Nottinghamshire, in November 1290. The grieving king, funnily enough, I think he kicked the Jews out of Europe, out of England, in 1291, I believe it was. The grieving king walked 200 miles with her body in a funeral procession that ended at Westminster Abbey, London. At each of the 12 places they rested overnight, including here in Geddington, Edward had a memorial cross made by the finest stonemasons in England. The statues, which you see around it, the three statues of Elanor show her as a young married woman wearing an elegant crown and a veil, with her wavy hair just visible. Married women covered their heads in the Middle Ages, so this glimpse of Eleanor's hair shows her a woman as well as a queen. The history timeline: born in 1241 in Spain, daughter of King Ferdinand III, marries Prince Edward, son of Henry III of England, 1254, so she was only 13. Edward and Eleanor crowned king and queen after death of Henry III, 20 years later, 1274. 10 years later she gives birth to her 16th child, Edward, later Edward II of England. And when she died 60 years later, 1290, in Harby, Nottinghamshire, while travelling with King Edward I. So she would have been 49, maybe 50. No, 49. Yeah, so that's the story behind it.
Their word and kiss the stone, and then if you're the king, it's behind the altar, and someone would carve a four-cornered cross. Now, normal crosses like this are votive crosses, everybody puts them. But ones with corners, because you're promising to go to the four corners of the earth, the four Gospels. And the last crusade was 1281, and this was built in 1369. But they brought the stone back, and the Victorians used a mortar that was so caustic that they had to destroy all the stone on this section, except for this. This is all that's left of something like 300 or 400 Crusader crosses. And they're different crusades. See them here?
Oh, is it etched
in?
Yeah.
Those are from 1120, 13th to 12th century.
Yeah, just got it there.
There's 26 of them actually.
Yeah.
You have to do a rubbing. Now, another thing is, on the south side of churches, people see these things and they say that they're calipers, and they think they're mason marks. And they're not. They're what they're called massive scratch tiles, depending on what type they are. And there's a fake one here. The Victorians came in here. We got Gilbert Scott after he finished working in Westminster Abbey. So he came down here and he raised our roof, he raised the arches, threw out 600 years of frescoes. Anyways, this is a new buttress, and therefore anything you see here is going to be fake, because it's Norman and it wouldn't be on a Victorian buttress. But it's a very good fake if this is what you're looking for. See these lines coming out?
Yep.
You put your finger in, the shadow tells you when the next church service is. That's matins, that's midday, could be Compline, evensong. If they're on the old buttresses, they're 700 years old, and they're basically the notice board for the church. Now this is, we assumed was fake because it's Saxon on a Norman buttress, and the Victorians refaced the stone, so it couldn't be real. But we now believe the Victorians said, the Normans felt that anything that Edward the Confessor might have touched had to be kept. And if they thought he put his finger in here, they'd go out of their way to keep it. Now the way Saxon scratch tiles, here's a dark spot inside.
Yeah.
Put your finger up to the dark spot, that's June 21st. You push it the rest of the way, that's December 21st. You find the correct date, and that adjusts for the azimuth of the sun.
Like a calendar.
Plus or minus 5 minutes, this thing is absolutely accurate, and it should be over 1,000 years old.
That's crazy.
You just can walk past this
Yeah.
stuff and
It's like
not see it.
like a Stonehenge sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, people say, oh, sundials are useful. The church tours I've been doing for 20 years. They are completely free. They are 5-star listed in Yelp and TripAdvisor, and we have satisfied thousands of people, especially the walking groups and U3As, and I do lectures. But the other portion of that card is because we do ghost walks, we recreate wassail, and I do charge a little bit for that.
Rightly so, yeah.
Village tours we do for the food bank and the church tours. It's free. If you want to give a donation to church, we always appreciate it.
There you go, mate. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's all.
I love doing this stuff. I have to retire, and I used to teach history, so there's, this is need.
There you go.
Need to go out there and harass.